All right. Seeing some familiar faces already. Thanks for hopping in already, guys. We'll go ahead and get started. A little intro here, and then we'll get off and running. But again, thanks so much for joining us today. Really excited about this Smarter Sales series that we're starting here today. We're going to be here for the next few weeks, breaking down, just kind of some best practices for doing better out in the field, asking the right questions, getting the right answers, and helping you guys board more merchants. But before we get into that, again, thanks so much for joining. You all have come to know and to see that at Host, your success as agents is our top priority. We want to keep pouring into you guys. You guys can keep having success and boarding more merchants. We're dedicated to providing you amazing support, you and your merchants. See best-in-class support for your deals. And we're also doing everything we can to pour more value into you all with these webinars and a bunch of other things that we got going on. So again, you guys have your merchants have 24/7 tech support. You agents have personal relationship managers that know your business and help your clients get up and running quickly. Here at Host, of course, you've got access to a fairly unmatched selection of payment technologies from physical devices, from Valor, Clover, Deja Vu, and Genico, and more, to some really awesome and a wide variety of payment gateways that we've done a lot of webinars on here recently. But again, thanks so much for joining us. We're going to continue to provide more solutions for you all, better info, better training, so that you all can continue to see success at a higher level. But without any more ado, let's go ahead and hop in here. I'm going to share my screen. We'll be off and running. Also, Chris Clements, our VP of Sales, is joining us here today. We may have some other team members here. Remember, you can feel free to type in questions along the way. I'll try to make some time at the end for questions, but if you have some questions in the moment, Chris or other team members may be able to hop in and help you there. So feel free to type in your questions, and we'll try to get to them all. All right, so again, welcome to Smarter Sales Series Part 1, which is on discovery, asking better questions, and winning more deals because of it. So here's a little bit of a roadmap. I think we're going to be delivering stuff for you guys here on a weekly basis. We're planning 4 parts here. It may wind up changing, but please be sure to mark on your calendars. We're going to try to keep it Thursdays at 4 o'clock. That seems to be received pretty well. But again, today is all about discovery. Next week, we're going to be talking about, presenting solutions and then handling objections. And then finally, best practices for closing deals. Okay. All right. So discovery. So what the heck is this all about? All right. So instead of just going in with kind of your own agenda, the things that you want to sell, we really want to encourage you all to discover what they need, what their pain points are and what they need. So again, you want to understand before you start making offers. You want to understand what they need and what their pain points are before you start pitching things. Okay? Because I think we've all been pitched things that we weren't interested in, did not seem to be helpful to us. Or worse, we were trying to tell someone what we wanted and they came back to us trying to sell us something else that clearly wasn't in alignment with what we needed. Okay. And that's a first-class ticket to getting tuned out and being sent on your way. There's a book that I've read a few times called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, I believe. Anyway, in there he talks about one of the key things in how to win friends and influence people is you have to show them that you care about and are going to pay attention to the things that they care about, right? So a lot of these people, you don't know them, so you don't know what they care about. You don't know what their issues are, but you have to show them that you genuinely care about what they're going through or what's important to them in order for them to feel that connection with you. Okay. Whether it's, when my son was 3 years old and wanted to show me the trains over and over and over again, right? If I wanted to develop a relationship and have him bought into interacting with daddy, I needed to show him that, hey, yeah, buddy, I'm interested in your in your trains and in your toys. Show me some more about that, right? Even if maybe I had my own agendas, I needed to show him, hey, yeah, I want to hear what's going on in your world. I want you to be able to share with me, right? So again, whether it's your 3-year-old son want to talk about trains or whether it's a business owner that's got his own issues, if you just start bulldozing them, if I had talked to my 3-year-old or to my wife, I just start bulldozing her with what my agenda is. If it's not in alignment with what she wants, then it's not going to go anywhere, right? And same thing with these merchants and these business owners. So you got to listen, you got to ask the right questions and listen so you can understand where they're at. So then you know how you're going to help them. Okay. You got to learn how the business operates. Got to uncover pain points. What are their goals? What are their growth barriers? Okay. Build trust through curiosity. Tell me some more about that. Okay. I did a lot of work for years in business consulting and recruiting and hiring. Okay. And you're not hiring here, but still there's an element of wanting to create a connection with the person so that they're going to open up to you so that you can learn more so that you can work with them. Or when I was doing hiring before, obviously you wanted to get to the bottom of who this individual was, what made them tick, and whether it was going to be in alignment for you. So a little bit different here, but a similar principle. If I can show you, hey, that's interesting. Tell me some more about that. That's a great question because it causes them, it's a little sneaky because it's technically a command, right? Tell me some more about that. But it's done with curiosity and you're showing interest in something that they're already talking about and wanting to share. And so even though it's a command, it feels like, there's much more, it's not really a command. It's, hey, I'm interested in this and I want to understand. I'm curious about what you're going through and how I might be able to help you. And I think we've all seen people or had interactions ourselves in many different walks of life. When somebody gives a you-know-what about us, they want to hear what we're going through, they're curious, that causes us to want to connect with them and want to open up with them, right? And that's what you need these merchants to do because we'll talk about it in a second, these people are getting approached all the time. So who are you? If you're just someone knocking on a door, picking up a phone, calling them, trying to sell them again, the same way, it's probably not going to work very often. But if they can feel like you genuinely care, like you're genuinely curious, you want to know where they're coming from, you've got a better chance to create that connection and cause them to feel like you're the one that is going to actually get them to where they want to be because you listen. All right. Why discovery matters. Again, like I said a second ago, merchants are approached constantly. Okay. I get partner agent calls. I had one just yesterday with someone that's going to be joining us, and he's like, "Man, it seems like every time I call, like I'm the fifth person that's called him that day, right?" And so again, if you're going to be the fifth person calling him every day, you better find a way to make yourself different than the others, right? And there's a lot of people out there that are just kind of churning through calls, churning through contacts, and just moving on to the next without taking the time. Price alone is no longer differentiates you. Okay, so we've talked about this before. We'll talk about it some more. And especially being aligned with Host, which is a company that was built on the principle of good service. And again, I talk with new clients, leads every single day. And the conversation always starts along the lines of, or it comes out in the first few minutes, yeah, I was looking you guys up online and I can see there's some bad companies out there, but you guys are really, really highly reviewed, you know? That's a big differentiation for you out in the field, is that you happen to be, and it's not by mistake because you chose us probably for that same reason. You probably looked us up and you saw that we're really great in terms of customer support, customer care. Okay. So again, there's a temptation to just get to, okay, I want to just undercut and try to sell them on that. But if you go that route and you haven't built that trust and buy-in, then someone else can just come along and undercut you, and they don't feel that connection, they don't feel that loyalty to you. There's some agents on the call right now when I've talked with your merchants and they're like, yeah, I get called all the time, but I'm not talking to them because I trust this person. Dean's on the call. I trust Dean, right? And they're like, I'm not talking to anybody else because he's the best and he's always there for me. You know, Dean has done what he needed to do to show these people that he cares and he has their best interests. He's always there for them, and so is host, and so that's why these people stay with him forever. Consultative approach that builds long-term relationships. Okay, we're going to talk more about that today, but again, discovery, learning, um, and acting not as a salesperson. Nobody likes being sold to. But if you approach it as, you're going to discover, you're going to learn more about what they need, and you're going to be acting as a consultant as opposed to a salesperson, that has a much different and much better feel. Okay. And again, trust drives retention. We talked about that a second ago. Trust drives retention, not the rates, right? So if you just get the business based on rates and you've just been like, hey, I'm going to undercut the other person, I can save you a few bucks a month, great. There's no trust there. Versus if you took the time, built the relationship, heard them out, made them feel heard and understood, then if there's an issue, they should come back to you and not just ditch you for the next person that calls. All right, so again, paradigm shift here, is listening. I've beaten the horse a little bit dead, and it's going to get even more dead here. But the old approach was, I've got an agenda. I know what I want to sell. I'm just going to go out and pitch, 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 and try to close. Smarter approach, again, is to ask good questions, listen, diagnose how you can help make this person's life better beyond just, I can save you a couple of dollars, right? And then you move on to solve. All right. Discovery framework. Let's talk through this. Okay, so we've already talked a bit about building rapport. You got to make the merchant feel comfortable. Okay, and you can do that by asking kind of open-ended questions like the hows, the whats, the tell me more about this, something like that, and then actively listening. Okay, so again, you're going to make them feel more comfortable if you're showing that genuine interest in them and you're coming from curiosity so that you can figure out how as a consultant you can make their life better. Active listening is important, okay? Some people don't know how to actively listen. It's a little bit hard to do it sometimes, because you go into a sales meeting and you're thinking in your mind about, oh, how do I want this conversation to go? Obviously, there needs to be a little bit of that, right? But at the end of the day, if you're thinking the whole time about, again, your agenda and where you want it to go, you're going to be deaf to what they're saying, and then you're going to say something that's going to show them that you're not really listening to them and they're not really being heard. And as soon as that happens, boom, it's done, right? I don't have time for this, right? So taking notes, confirming that you're understanding, sometimes repeating back to them. I think it's in a later slide, but sometimes people will be like, okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, this, and this, right? And you repeat them back what they said. That feels good to most people because that tells them, I am listening to you and I am trying to help you solve your issues. Okay. Identifying opportunities. Of course, as you're actively listening, you're uncovering their pain points. And of course, that is actually, unfortunately, where a lot of the closing is going to wind up happening, right? Unfortunately, humans tend to avoid pain, do things to avoid pain, even more so than actually going after the things that they want, right? Pain avoidance is a very human thing, right? So I'm not saying that you fearmonger here, but when you find a pain point, you do kind of need to press it a little bit. And some people might say that that's manipulative. I guess it's semantics. I would argue that it's not manipulative to find someone's pain point and then press them on it, right? Like there's a lot of people, these merchants have a ton going on in their life and their business. They're juggling a million things to the point where they have these pain points and they haven't even done anything about them. Okay? People have pain and they're not even doing anything about it. Why are they not doing anything about it? Well, maybe they feel like they're too busy. Maybe they feel like it's going to be too expensive. Maybe they feel like it's going to be impossible. Okay? There's any number of reasons why. But there is pain there, and by you pressing on the pain or pressing them on the pain a little bit and then offering the solution, I would argue you're helping people, right? Yes, you're pressing on the pain, but people need that sometimes, right? People need a reason, especially very busy people need a reason to move. right? The human condition, generally speaking, is they get into a condition and then it's difficult for them to change. It's difficult for them to move. It's they stay, even though it's uncomfortable, they stay with the familiar as opposed to going to the unknown. We talk with people every day, and you all probably do too. You're out there in the field, and you've got people that didn't even know a solution was available, or they didn't even think it was possible. Okay? There was an example I talked about on a webinar not too long ago where there was a woman that owned a grocery store, and she had a gift card program, right? In her mind, she had kind of built up her own reasons why it was going to be impossible to move. She felt like she couldn't get her head around the logistics of how she's got all these gift cards floating around all over the place. And how in the world could she just change systems, right? She couldn't understand that. And just the fact that she couldn't understand it caused her to not take the extra effort to try to figure out if it could be done because she just stayed with what was familiar. And then it took talking with me and us here at Host to realize, oh, it's actually not that big a deal. You've been paying through the teeth. We can actually solve that very easily for you. It's not actually that big of a deal. We just need to get a report, on the outstanding balances on the cards, which they have to give you, and they did. And then we made the move, and she's living happily ever after, right? Transition to solutions. Obviously, you want to tie your insights into HMS's offerings, and not to promote the company again too much, but you've got a lot of solutions here, right? I sign up new agents every day that are like, wow, like this, you guys have way more technology, way more options available. The company I'm at, I was given like 3 machines and told these are the ones you're going to sell, go sell them, right? Whereas with us, you all know you have access to a pretty unmatched selection of technologies, right? There's a ton of different ways that we can help you get these merchants into a better place and get more of them in your residuals. All right. Power of great questions. Okay. So again, we need to be asked. The secret here is asking the right questions. If you can ask the right questions that get them to open up about themselves, their issues, the hurdles they're facing, the pain points that they have, that's unlocking the door for you. Okay. So again, the first thing you want to start off with is, okay, because you have kind of 3 major categories, most of you. So you got service, retail, or restaurant. That's where you're going to have to start, because there's going to be different questions, and we'll give some kind of case examples here in a little bit for some questions. But the questions for a service business are going to be a little bit different than the retail, and very different from the restaurant in many cases. Okay. But we want to ask questions to understand their business, in its current state. What are they selling? What systems and tech are they using? How are they getting paid? Each one of these questions, as we learn more about them, is going to give us ideas about how we can make their life better, or at least to ask questions about how we might be able to make their life better. Okay. Obviously, systems and tech, we got a ton we can do there, and in particular, how they're getting paid. There's a lot of business out there that are getting paid in a way that is not ideal for them. Okay. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I was talking with a friend whose husband owns a trucking company, and they're going to be moving over with us because they're paid by check, but the check's in the mail, right? 6 months later, the check's not in the mail, so we're going to help improve that business. We're going to improve that business's cash flow, because I said, how are you guys getting paid? And are there any issues around that? Actually, yeah, we're getting paid, but when are we getting paid, right? And that affects things. All right. So more power, great questions. Okay. Ask questions that create insight. Okay. So again, and a lot of this you're going to see is going to be coming from curiosity. So questions like, so what do you, not after you learn what their system is, well, what are the things that you like about this, right? That's telling you what you're going to need to be able to provide them in a similar system, right? What's one thing that you wish it did better? Okay, it doesn't sound like a pain point question, but it's at least a way for you to add value, if not dig a little bit deeper on pain. Okay. Um, Now, not just from the owner's perspective. Okay. So you might be talking with the business owner and you might say, hey, what's one thing you wish it did better? And the owner yesterday said to me, well, I want to get paid faster. I don't want to wait 6 months at times for these people to give me my money. Right. But you don't necessarily leave it there, right? Because there may be other things, because when you're talking to them person to person, they're in their own frame of reference. They may not think about things like, well, what about your support staff? What challenges are they facing? Okay. What things could be better for them so that they can run faster for you and so that the business can run more efficiently. Okay. So again, like an example there could be, we were talking with someone the other day and they were like, well, I mean, I guess my feels like my staff is having to do a lot of double work, because something's getting entered over there and then it has to go here and then someone's got to manually put it into QuickBooks and it feels like the team's doing double or triple work at times. And it's like, well, if we had a solution that could automatically, connect with QuickBooks and your transactions just shoot straight over to QuickBooks, would that help buy back some time for your support staff and make them more productive? Okay, great. Well, we can help with that. Okay. So again, ask them, but then also, what about the people that work for you? Okay. What are they saying? All right. How do you track sales and customer data? Okay. A lot of them are not tracking that at all, depending upon the business and the vertical. Obviously we talked, how do you currently accept payments? How else would you like, put another way, how else would you like to be able to accept payments? Right. So yesterday with the trucking company, it's like, well, I mean, if we can take a card and just tap to pay on a cell phone, while we're out there, as opposed to waiting for a check, it's probably worth it to me, to pay the 3% or whatever it is on average, right? Or we can, you know, do um, a surcharge and you don't have to pay for that either, right? We just talked about collecting payments or late payments, okay? What takes up the most time during checkout or reporting? Okay, that's again kind of a staffing question, but again, these things matter. These business owners, they're paying people to work for them and they want them to do more. They want them to do more so the business can do better. If you could change one thing about the current setup, would it be, is there a reason why you're not doing? Okay, so um, so that might be, even more of a leading question if they don't kind of open the door completely, right? Like if you find out that it's a trucking company and you find out that, well, they're waiting for checks to come in, if they don't offer on the front end, oh, well, I'd love to take payments right away. They just say this is the way it's done because it's been done that way forever. You could instead be a little bit more direct and say, is there a reason why you haven't why you're not choosing to take immediate payments? Um, Listening and mining for gold. Okay. Again, what problems are they hinting at? What frustrations come up repeatedly? What emotions are attached? What do they avoid talking about? This last one especially maybe is a little bit tricky, but when you ask these right questions, these probing questions coming from curiosity, you're going to uncover their issues, right? And it's going to get animated sometimes. There's going to be emotion behind it, and that emotion tells you that's the pain point, right? That's what I have to solve, right? They're serving it up for you if you're actively listening. You open the door, you let them walk through, you let them expose what the pain is, you solve the pain, you get the client. Okay? And again, that last one, what do they avoid talking about? This is a little bit more of a direct approach, but if it does seem like they're dancing around something, you can say something like, hey, it seems like there might be an issue with this. Can you tell me some more about what's going on there? And then they finally open up to it. Okay. You don't, depending upon your read of the person, you maybe don't want to say, you're not telling me something, right? That's probably not what you want to do, but you want to at least offer, hey, it feels like there's something else going on, you know? And then again, when you say it feels like there's something else going on, what are you doing? You're showing you actively listened. You're showing that you give a darn about them. You're showing that you're curious and you want to learn more. And a lot of times people will be like, yeah, actually there is. This is the issue. Okay. But you don't get that until you listen and you dig. All right. Common pitfalls. This is the first of two appearances of Jerry Maguire here. But again, talking too much, which is funny because I'm talking the whole time here now. But again, you can talk your way out of these things. Okay. You want to focus on listening. Okay. And a lot of you know, like once you have that person sold, you also don't keep talking too much. Okay. Rushing to a quote, assuming you always know the answer, and then not asking follow-up questions. If you're not asking follow-up questions, you're probably not listening. Okay. Rushing to a quote, sometimes, they may not be ready for it. Assuming you already know the answer. Okay. Yeah. Don't assume, ask. I'm guessing this is the case, or it sounds like this might be the case. Is that correct? And curiosity, people usually like that. Turn discovery into trust. Use what you learned in your proposal, reference their goals and frustrations, show that you're listening, show that you listened and understood. If I'm hearing you correctly again, this is what you're saying, or this is what you're frustrated, or this is what's not working right, or this is what you feel like is missing and needs to be solved, and then I'm here to solve it. Okay? You're a solution partner, not a processor, not a salesperson. You're there to find a solution. All right. Now, a couple of things really fast. We're gonna go over like I always do. Sorry, guys. Um, in the field, couple little recommendations. Okay, while you do want to ask the questions, ideally you already know the answers to the questions, or at least you have a pretty good idea about the answers to the questions. Okay, a lot of these verticals, most of these verticals, there are usual suspect issues that these people will be facing. Okay, so try to understand the business and its needs before the sales call. Okay. That means doing some due diligence. Look them up. Go on their website. Do Chat GPT. Contact your RM here at Host. Okay. You're facing, if you're facing it, we've probably faced it a million times. Okay. Contact your RM and say, hey, I'm going to pitch this company. I'm thinking about taking this approach, or these are the probable solutions here. What are your thoughts? That's what we're here for. Okay. Again, walk in already knowing what they probably need. Okay. You may have a solution for making their life better or easier that they don't even know about. Okay. And hopefully that's the case, right? If you come in and you already know what their issue is, you already know how to solve it, you uncover that it's there, and you're ready to tell them all about how you're going to make their life better, you're going to win. All right. A couple quick examples. I'll try to get you out of here fast before we run out of time. So again, an example like an HVAC company, okay? Some issues that people face there, okay? We know, or some people know, but a lot of times the way these businesses operate, it's a dude in a truck, and the tech's out in the field, and he's gonna write down a credit card number on a piece of paper, take it back to his office and run it, or he's gonna call them and he's gonna give the number over the phone and they're gonna run it, okay? And he's gonna sit there and wait for all this to happen, or the actual writing it down, and oh, what are they doing? Where's that piece of paper going? Who's on the other end of the phone? I don't like this. Nobody likes it. It creates an awkward situation, right? So you know that may be the case, especially if it's a smaller business. Okay. So a question like, do you ever get pushback from customers with the current process if you find out that that's how they do it, right? They probably do. Okay. Or at least, or if they feel like they haven't, they get it. They get that could be an issue. Okay. And if you're not collecting payment on the spot, how often is payment not collected, or at least delayed? We talked about delayed payments, right? If they got to take a card number down and they got to go back to the office and they got to run it back there at the office, or if they got to take a check, okay, and then they got to drive to the office, they got to go deposit the check, and they it takes a little bit of time to clear, and it bounced. Now we got to go chase people. Now we're debt collectors. That's no fun for anyone, right? So what if your tech was able to text an invoice directly to the customer on the spot right there in the house and get paid, right? So, okay, Mr. Dosen, here's your $150, I wish, bill for your HVAC service today. I'm going to text it to you right now, and you can just go ahead and pay that right now. And now I feel better because my number's not floating around out there. I have control over it. I'm able to Apple Pay or enter my card info in there, and it's done, and we all feel good, and the tech is able to go off, business got paid, great. Okay. Um, how are you managing your tech schedules? What about accounting and bookkeeping? Okay. So these are common issues that these businesses have. If they do have a tech solution, such as Jobber, we did a webinar on this last week, Jobber, House Call Pro, Service Titan, if they are using one of these softwares that everybody uses, well, everybody's also paying through the teeth for these softwares, okay? And that doesn't mean that you have to use or recommend our cloud job software, even though it's great, okay? Maybe they don't even feel like they need that. Maybe they literally just want to be able to do tap to pay on their cell phone out in the field, and they feel like that's going to solve everything. And they do a deja vu, and they just and iPause pays, and they're able to tap to pay out in the field, and then it's connected to QuickBooks, and that's all they need. Great. Well, you solved some issues there for them. Okay. And you might even have enabled them to save some money. Okay. Studios and gyms. Again, these are some of those cloud manager verticals that we've talked about. But again, going into those gyms, knowing what they're probably doing, right? You go on their website, they've got recurring memberships, maybe packages of sessions. They maybe do some one-off sales of products and services. We've talked about this many times. You know that they're either doing it themselves, right? They're either doing it themselves in like a Google Calendar or an Excel spreadsheet or something like that, or they're using a pricey software like MindBody that's costing them hundreds of dollars a month. Okay. They probably don't love that. They're probably not using it all. Okay. This isn't about pitching Cloud Studio, but again, a lot of the Cloud Studio people that have come over have been using MindBody, and they've been paying hundreds of dollars a month, thousands of dollars a year for it, and they're not using all the bells and whistles. They're paying for this Cadillac plan, but they don't do heavy email marketing. They don't actually need AI-driven auto text responders and auto website responders and all that stuff. Or at least it would be nice to have, but they don't necessarily want to spend thousands of dollars a year on it, but they're doing it anyway because they feel like they're supposed to be with MindBody. Okay. Do they just need something simple for collecting one-off and recurring payments, whether it's Cloud Studio or whether it's one of the other payment gateways that we have? Okay. They may have issues managing schedules and inventory and collecting waivers and signed documents. Okay, somebody drops a weight on their toe, class packs, all that stuff. Okay. Another thing too, my wife's a personal trainer. A lot of trainers out there have small studios and they're just getting paid by Venmo, Zelle, PayPal, check, or by check. And my wife has faced collection issues in the past. My wife has said to me before in the past, hey, I mean, my client's supposed to pay me, but they keep not paying me, right? But they keep showing up, and it's like, okay, well, maybe if we put them on a recurring payment plan and it just collects it automatically, then you don't have to worry about that, and they even will stay on longer because the recurring payment plan will work. So again, knowing your verticals and knowing the types of questions that probably need to be asked because you know the answers they're probably facing, that's a big difference maker. All right, so we went over today by a few minutes. Sorry about that, guys. Hopefully you found a lot of this valuable. We're going to be coming up next time with Elaine down here, and solutions, and then objection handlers, and closing deals. So again, we're here to help you, here to support you. Suggestions, we're open to suggestions. If you want to talk about those cloud products, again, a lot of you have been taking advantage of them. We got more people on those every day. Reach out for demo requests. We will help with the demo requests there. In terms of like sales advice, and you're going to go pitch somebody and you're not sure which solutions you should be offering or questions you should be asking, you can ask your RMs. That's what we're here for. So in the meantime, thanks so much for joining us today. Reach out if you have any questions, and actually, let me see if there were any unanswered questions here. I don't see any. All right. No questions from you guys. All right. Everyone have a great day. Thanks so much, and talk to you next week.